This is Sweden. You ain't packing gas, you ain't hard, you ain't living in the garage. Cause it's Sweden. Fly overseas, claim use a G. Please believe this ain't Sweden. Witness a massacre in Middle East to Africa. Bet you be thanking God it's Sweden. Stop lying, dog, you ain't struggling at all. Cause this is Sweden. You ain't packing gas, you ain't hard, you ain't living in the garage. Cause it's Sweden. Fly overseas, claim use a G. Please believe this ain't Sweden. Witness a massacre in Middle East to Africa. Bet you be thanking God it's Sweden.
This is the Swedish Startup Sessions.
Hello, I'm here with Johan Jörgensen, serial entrepreneur, and I've been running into you on and off for several years. Tell me a little about your background.
Okay, so I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been around in the Swedish internet industry for the past 2 decades now. Done a lot of startups. I'm also a seed investor, invested in a very early stage. So that's basically me. Done a lot of crazy things.
And how since this is a session about startups, how do you see it as a seed investor that Sweden compared to other regions, or Scandinavia I would say, compare with other regions in the world?
Good question. If you take a look at for instance, Silicon Valley, they have a lot more capital and more experienced entrepreneurs who turn investors. Yeah. So in Sweden, we lack that a little. It's still a tendency that when someone's done an exit, they invest in property instead, or stock, shares. Yeah. Instead of going for new investments.
Yeah. But we also have a lock-in effect there. I think it's 5 years that you get.
Yes, there are a lot of negative parts of it. But I think the most important thing is that we don't have a culture for it. Yeah. So once we get that culture of reinvesting your capital into new ventures, taking risk again, so to say, then I think we have a pretty good situation here, because we have a lot of creativity, high technical proficiency, etc. So.
And you have a new venture, which when I heard about it, I felt this is a bit wacky. But it's very cool. So what is it?
Yeah, it's pretty fun. It's a new venture that really deals with the fundamental problem we have, that nothing in our culture is, it's lasting. So not even the houses we sit in or live in, nothing will last for more than 100 years from now. They will be gone essentially. So there will be no traces left of the people who are here right now. Yeah. So what we decided to do is to save traces of our culture in the only future-proof format which we know of, which is cutting them into rock.
Wow. And the company is called?
SavedInStone.com.
Saved in Stone. That's almost poetic.
Yeah, well, thank you.
And how do you do that? I mean, I understand the sort of manufacturing part of cutting into stone, but how does the business model work?
Well, the business model is pretty easy. It's once we cut something into stone. Well, we charge people for cutting stuff into stone. So, but the model starts a bit before. You have to, as a customer, first go through a rather mental process. I mean, we all run around today trying to save everything we do digitally, be it a blog post or a picture. We try to save that in a format so we can look at it again, in some distant future. And then we probably ask ourselves, why did I save this useless picture? Why didn't I take a good one instead? Focus on that. So what we say is to people to focus on the most important things, the messages we really like to say. And then we'll save those for you forever by cutting them into rock. So that's really the starting point for this. And once you've taken that realization, done that mental mapping of your innermost thoughts, then we can take over from there and actually carve this into our Granite Mountain, which we have on the Swedish.
So we're not talking about something like plaques or headstones, we're talking mountain here.
We're talking mountain, yes. Well, you can of course do that in plaques and headstones. I mean, like there are even printers for headstones today. So that's a pretty easy thing to do actually. But I think a mountain is more appropriate in a way, and we also
and you don't lose it as easily.
No, you don't lose it. You can't just drop it and it cracks.
Yeah.
You know, so it's there, and it's also interesting because right next to our mountain, where we have our modern carvings, we have a UNESCO World Heritage Site of Bronze Age carvings. So it's really trying to put the new time next to the old times.
So it's a basically 2,000-year-old span between these carvings.
Yes, exactly. So people didn't carve. Well, people did. The Vikings did carve, for instance, and people have carved a little here and there over the years, but they haven't made a concerted effort to put our culture into rock.
Yeah.
And think of it, the only cultures we know anything of are the ones who actually did carve something into rock.
Yeah.
So, but at that time it was only the pharaohs or the kings who could afford it. Yeah, who could afford this.
Yeah.
So it's all about the royal class, so to say, and their message to the future about themselves as the heroes. Now this is suddenly democratic in a way, so everyone can do that.
That's cool. Yeah. So do you have any competitors or?
Well, you couldn't say that we have competitors yet. No, so it's more about mentality, how you think of it. I think that's our challenge right now, to have people start to think of something that will last for 5,000 years or until the next ice age.
Yeah.
So, that's the competition.
I'm starting to think about language and stuff like
yes,
that.
Absolutely.
How do we sort of preserve it in a language they will understand?
It's a very good question, and what we'll do is to carve a lot of legends into the mountains, so it will be possible for people to interpret the language.
Yeah. And what about customers? Is it currently mostly Scandinavians, or is it?
Yeah, well, we have
all over the world.
We had some customers from the US, for instance, already, so that's fun. I think it's particularly fun that someone who lives in the US wants to carve something in a place in Sweden.
Yeah.
But I think that's also very important, because when we take a look at stone, dig into the stone situation around the world, Swedish granite is perhaps the most appropriate for this project. It's been polished by the ice ages, so it's very smooth, no cracks in it. So, and it's granite, which is extremely durable, of course.
And we don't have any earthquakes.
No, we don't have any earthquakes to speak of. It's probably the most geological stable place on the planet. We had a meteorite some 365 million years ago, but that was the last incident. So it will stay there. It will stay there forever, basically.
When did you found this company? What stage are you at right now?
Well, we're up and running now. So you could say we're past the seed stage, and for us, this is more about selling the vision now and have people realize the importance of doing this.
Yeah. And how do you scale something like that? Is it throwing more stone cut at it, or?
Exactly. So what you do is, we have the mountain. It's a pretty large mountain. So if orders will start pouring in, we can always throw another stone engraver into this, so to scale it, and it's pretty fun because the Swedish West Coast, which is unknown to most, but has been a center for granite production for centuries essentially. So Swedish granite from the West Coast is covering palace floors all over, and so there's a strong stone tradition as well, apart from the fact that we have those Bronze Age carvings there.
And do you have? Is it like a e-commerce solution to order the stone, or?
Well, if you take a look at it, the site looks really savethestone.com. It looks really bad. It's but that's not the point of this project. So what happens is you go to the site and essentially you tell us what you'd like us to carve, and then including a picture that you could upload, and then we will get back to you with a suggestion or quote to do this, because all these carvings can be different, and then we can carve anything into the mountain, but some things are trickier and some things are easier, so therefore we'd like to have this manual process first with a check to say, okay, this can really be made in a good way.
I guess that texts and flat pictures are easier than if you want to sculpture or something like that.
Well, you can of course sculpture, but if you're going to make a sculpture,
Yeah.
I don't think you should have that out in the free, in the open. It's better with a text and pictures. You know, that you can sort of say posterize a little, so you take away the finest details of it. Then they're excellently, you know, it's very possible to get them in an excellent fashion into the mountain. So that's what I would suggest. But anything goes, basically.
And how much? I mean, what's the starting price? Because it sounds quite pricey.
Yeah, it is pricey. You know, it is costly to carve a mountain. So the starting price is, if I remember this correctly now, we start around what is it, $150 US, something like that.
Well, that's not much.
No, that's not much. But on the other hand, you know, you don't get too many signs. You can basically say hello. So
Yeah.
no, but it is a starting cost because it's about preparing the mountain. You have to prepare the mountain, dry out all the moisture from it. You have to you know, bring all the equipment there and then start carving.
You have external investors, or this is your own project?
No, we're totally a total of 8 people working with this, and we don't have any external investors, so we finance this ourselves.
Yeah. And what is your goal with this? How far do you think you can take this?
This mountain is about saving our culture for the future. So, and that's not only the Swedish culture or the Stockholm culture or the West. It's the human culture of our times that's going to be carved into that mountain, so that people in the distant future, 5,000 years from now, know what happened when we lived here. So that's the fundamental of this project. But then, you know, we realized that we need to take the help of others to do this, and so we opened up this mountain for people to write basically anything, what they'd like to say to the world.
You know any similar projects around the world that might have a government funding or something like that?
No, we haven't heard of anything similar to this. What you do have, of course, is the Long Now Foundation in the US, who produced this magnificent clock.
Yeah.
But that's the only other project I know which take a very long time view.
Yeah. No, because I could imagine that, you know, some art project or something like that did something similar, but then they don't have this democratic angle that I could ask you to carve something.
No, and of course we've seen stone carving around the world, but I think what one of the problems is with these isolated stone carvings is that, okay, it will be carved into a rock somewhere and then it will be forgotten. Yeah. And someday perhaps someone will notice it again. But if you collect a lot of carvings on one place, suddenly it becomes much more attractive to preserve this. Yeah. And I think that's important. So you can go to one place to look at carvings. So you have a couple of those places around the world. You have of course, the west coast of Sweden. You also have in Italy a huge collection of Bronze Age carvings in Val Cremona. So there are a couple of those places around, and we'd like to create a similar place for our times. Yeah,
it's fantastic. You have learned so much during your 2 decades as a startup entrepreneur and also seed investor. And what could you, any advice to other entrepreneurs that are perhaps starting out? Well, I guess we could, you know, do this like a week-long interview.
Yes, exactly. No, I think the most important one is that you shouldn't try to bootstrap as much as you can, I'd say. Yeah. That's important because you learn so much from bootstrapping. And also go out and sell your product immediately. And you know, try to find help, and doesn't necessarily mean capital, but help from someone who's done something similar before. Yeah. Those would be the basic ones, and of course just get going, just do it. Don't sit around and plan for ages and ages. Yeah. Go out and do it.
I see right now that we see, for instance, in the US, this frenzy. You see photo app after photo app after photo app getting funded, and as an outside viewer, I don't really get how people dare to invest in so similar products, because I mean you get one winner, but a lot of categories right now, especially these quite easy to make, seem to be incredibly overcrowded, whereas other sectors, perhaps business to business sectors, are definitely not as attractive, whereas we know that they are more long term. Perhaps you don't get the next Facebook or Twitter, but they're more reliable and more long term.
I think that's an absolute correct observation. Personally, I love investing in business to business projects. They don't demand as much capital most of the time, and they're if you get a business customer, they tend to stay longer.
Yeah.
I think one of the problems with all these apps coming up is that the people who are doing them are perhaps not experienced enough to see the potential that lies in the business to business sector, which is a little bit more complicated. You have to know a little bit more about your branch or your industry.
You think that's a bit because a lot of investors are a bit enamored, I would say, in young people. You get this picture that the ideal startup entrepreneur, he's probably 19 and a half and a college dropout with no experience whatsoever. Whereas if you look at statistics, most successful companies are started by people who are in their 40s with a quite long experience within different fields.
Yeah, we've been mesmerized by the fact that these young tech whizzes can produce such fantastic technical stuff in no time, and of course we need to have that as well. But that mustn't be the only asset of a company. So you have to have something more as well, an original idea. And that could also be something to recommend to people, that they think really hard about their idea that they're going to launch, because they need to live with that for a decade or so before it really happens. Very, very few companies make it big within a year or two. Most of them you have to live with for a long time.
And if we sort of do a pivot to the other side, what advice can you give big companies? What can they learn from entrepreneurs and the startup method or process?
Well, of course, the methods, as you say, how to get creativity into the organization, and because that's most of the big companies really lack that, and they try to sit and defend their positions instead of proactively go out and try to gain new territory all the time. So that would be one thing, and also perhaps the attitude. I guess in a lot of companies you're fat and happy, but while entrepreneurs are not fat and happy, they're trying to go for it. And that type of hunger we need to feed every organization.
Do you think we will see a quick procession of big companies' failures in the coming, say, 5 years, because the market and the technology and the entire environment are so disruptive right now, with everything from climate change to peak oil to new technology?
Good question. Of course, we always see this creative destruction going around, but I'm not sure that a lot of big companies will fail. There's, saying in the industry, it goes, content is king, but distribution is King Kong. So if you sit on a lot of distribution, a lot of customers, that's power that will make you last for a long time. But of course, if you're for instance into publishing, that decay could go much faster, because so many other alternatives are coming up, and kids. We can take a look at comic books, for instance. They basically died when computer games came. So, and we probably see a lot of other industries similar.
Severely disrupted.
Severely disrupted.
Anything you want to add? Any final thoughts?
Yes, and I think, of course, I think if you take a look at your life and say, what's really important to you? I think that's a question that we put to ourselves way too seldom. So what's really important to me? And when I start to think of what's really important to me, you tend to get a longer term perspective on things. And that does something to you also, how you value your everyday activities. You don't measure them in short-term revenues or short-term kicks anymore, but is this suitable in the long-term perspective? And I think we always need to think in the long-term perspective for the planet, for future generations, etc. So just to make the mental, the mental thing to try to think of what's most important. That's a good challenge to yourselves. And
I think that's also we can see a trend towards that, when both within new capitalist theories and economic theories in mindfulness, and a lot of quite clear trend towards. Perhaps it's that we're fat and happy and we're looking for the next thing.
No, I think we're all parts of society, and we need to realize that. So we have had a very individualistic society for the past decades, and perhaps we're seeing it turn back again to see ourselves as a part of a society, which I think is important to do.
Fantastic. Thank you, Johan.
Thank you so much.